Welcome to Blind Bankers of India's YouTube channel. I welcome Dr. Ashwini sir for today's session on Advanced Bank Management, Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. Welcome, Ashwini sir.
Thank you, Nishanji. So I welcome all the viewers of Blind Bankers of India. So we're going to study Advanced Bank Management mandatory paper, the first paper that it is, the first module on economics, and we're going to focus on Chapter 3, that is on money supply and inflation, and also on Chapter 4, which is the theory of interest. With us, the role of student is being played by Shweta madam, and we are being supported by Amit Pahuja, Nishant ji, and all the members, Raza ji, and all the technical support that we have been getting from various people in Blind Bankers of India. They are providing the tools, support, and everything, and we are all grateful to them for that. So let us start off. Shweta madam, how are you?
Sir, I'm fine. How are you?
Absolutely fine. So let us see. Money has anything that performs four functions, that is medium, measure, standard, and store, is called money. So what is money?
Money is that perform four functions: medium, measure, standard, store.
Exactly. So it is a couplet called money has functions for medium, standard, medium, measure, standard, store. So what is a couplet?
Couplet is money has function for medium, measure, standard, store.
Okay. So why it is called medium of exchange? Money helps in exchanging goods and determination of prices. The prices in the demand and supply are determined in terms of rupee, in terms of money only. Second is medium. Then second is a measure. Whatever the recording, if you have to record the assets and liabilities, this recording of values has to be done in terms of money. Third is, it is a standard of accounting also. And store, in your pocket you can keep 1,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees, so it is a store of value also. So whenever you have to repay any loan, that is in terms of money only. It's in terms of rupee or in the terms of US dollars. So that is the four functions which money does, that is medium, measure, standard, store. Friends, your savings account, current account also does the same thing. In your savings account, what is there? In the saving account can help in determining the medium of exchange. You can make the payment through your saving account, giving a check or transferring it through internet. So it is a medium of exchange. Also measures the value in terms of money. It also stores, all your value is also stored in your savings account or in your current account. So therefore you would find the four functions of money are also being done by your saving account and current account. Next concept we have to understand is money supply. So money supply, there are two concepts. One is a stock concept at a point of time and a flow concept that is over a period of time. So money supply is a stock concept. It is at a point of time. Shweta ji, money supply is a stock concept or a flow concept?
Money supply is a stock concept at a point of time.
Second thing you have to understand is the supply of money is exogenously, that is externally determined. There is a certain agency which determines this much money supply circulation would be there. Second is endogenous. Endogenous is internal systemic factors, that is in the banking system. When the banking system creates money, as I share, your saving account, current account, how much the balances can be created through savings account and current account by money creation. So that is determined by the banking system. So exogenously, it is determined by the government, how much money would be printed and circulated. Endogenously, it is determined by what is the CRR, what is the SLR. So this endogenously determines how much money supply would be there in the economy. So money supply is exogenously or endogenously determined, Shweta ji?
Money supply is determined by both factors, endogenous and exogenous both.
Second, correct. So money is a stock concept at a point of time, money supply. And second thing is it is exogenously as well as endogenously determined. So we move ahead. Measurement of money. In India, the measurement of money is in terms of four definitions which are given here. One is M1, second is M2, third is M3, and fourth is M4. So we'll understand it one by one. M1 is the narrow definition of money. in M1 is equal to money supply with the public, that is all the cash that is there in the pocket of the public or they are at their homes. Second is the demand deposits, and the demand deposit include current account, saving account, then FD and RD which has already matured, and it also includes the reserve the bank keeps against the letter of credit or the guarantee. So money supply M1 is money supply with the public plus the demand deposit, which I have explained. There are components. And third thing is this is what gives us then deposit with the RBI. So three things are there in M1. Three things in M1 are, what are the three things? Shweta
In M1 there are In M1 there are three things. First one is the money with the public, that public has in the pocket or in the cash in hand with public. Secondly, the bond deposit with the bank, and third with other deposit with the RBI.
Absolutely. Now, second definition is called M2. M2 is M1 plus saving deposit with the post office. So what is M2?
M2 is M1 plus saving deposit with the post office.
And M3 is M1 plus time deposit with the bank. Let me explain. Time deposit is all the money that is FD and RD, which is not matured, is called time deposit. So what is M3? M3 is M1 plus time deposit with the bank. So what is M3?
M3 is M1 plus time deposit with the bank.
Okay. Next is M4. M4 is M3 plus all the deposit with the post office other than NSC. So all that the body's deposit is there with the post office, whether it is saving deposit, whether it's FD, all this is calculated, but NSC is not included in that, and that is added to M3, we get M4. So what is M4?
M4 is equal to M3 plus all the deposit held with the post office apart from NSC.
So you have understood what are the four definitions of money that are there in Indian economy?
Yes, sir.
Tell me.
There are four economy in the Indian economy: M1, M2, M3, M4. For defining M1, we add currency with the public, demand deposit with the bank, plus other deposit with the RBI. To calculate the M2, we have to add M1 with saving deposit with post office. To arrive the calculation for M3, we have to add M1 with term deposit or time deposit of bank. To arrive the M4, we have to add M3 with all the deposit with the post office, excluding NSC, National Service Certificate.
Wonderful, Shweta. You are really genius. I must say, you are wonderful. Great. Next, we understand inflation. So inflation is sustained rise in general price level over a period of time. I repeat, inflation is sustained rise in general price level over a period of time. So there is a sustained, it is not a one shot increase, continuously there is an increase. Then there is a general price level, not of one thing, but all the goods and services, they are becoming more expensive. And third thing, it is not for a week, it is for a over a period of time, for a longer period of time. So that is called inflation. So what are the three things important for inflation?
To define the inflation, we will say that inflation is a sustained rise in general prices of goods and services over a period of time, not a short time.
Great. Because of inflation, what is the impact? Impact is the erosion of the purchasing power. Whenever there is inflation, there is an erosion of purchasing power. That is, the real value of the money declines. What is the impact of inflation?
Impact of inflation is that when there is a inflation, the purchasing power of money declines, erosion in the purchasing power.
Measurement of inflation is annually. It is not weekly or monthly. So measurement of inflation is always annual. That is comparison to the price index today with the price index 1 year back, and it is in terms of percentage. So inflation is measured in a week, month, or a year.
So it is measured annually.
Correct. So the negative impact of inflation is it discourages savings. The negative impact of inflation is discourages saving and it reduces the purchasing power of the public. So public can purchase less. So the real value of the real income declines. So what are the two negative impact of inflation?
Two negative impact of inflation is that first one is that money purchasing power of money falls, that declines, and the second one is that people will buy.
No, the
Sorry, I forgot.
savings decline.
Yeah, saving. Whenever there is inflation, then people will have less money because they things are gone expensively higher, expensive, so they will get less money to save. So these two are the negative impact.
So what are the positive impact? Positive impact is the demand will increase, the production will increase, the employment opportunities will increase, and the debt burden of the government will decline. So what are the positive impacts of inflation?
Positive impact of inflation is that first one is demand will increase. If demand increase, production increase. If production increase, employment also increase. So this is the first one, and second one is the debt burden of government is also reduces due to less supply.
Correct. So 3 to 4% of inflation is healthy. If the inflation is less than 3 to 4%, the economy stagnates, and this is called stagflation. If the rate of interest, if the inflation rate is higher than 5%, again, that is not healthy because the purpose of economics is welfare. So it's not welfare because the purchasing power of the people is declining. So what is the healthy rate of inflation?
Healthy rate of inflation percentage is 3 to 4%.
Correct. If it is less, like in Japan, then the rate of the inflation, so there is a stagnation. If it is high, like in some of the countries, then the overall welfare people is adversely impacted, and the people are not happy if there is high inflation. So ideal healthy inflation is 3 to 4%.
3 to 4.
So there the people are also happy. The growth is also there, employment is there, and everything is in the right direction. Then what are the different types of inflation I'm to share? First is called demand pull inflation. When there is a general spurt in demand resulting in inflation, there is a general spurt in demand resulting in inflation. This is called demand pull inflation. Like in a COVID situation, suddenly people find there's a lockdown, so they rush for the goods, and there is a sudden increase in demand. This has resulted in demand pull inflation. So what is demand pull inflation?
Demand pull inflation is when there is spurt in demand, means increase in demand, then due to that inflation is increased. That is called demand pull inflation.
Second is the cost push inflation. Cost push inflation when the prices of the inputs increase, like the prices of oil have increased, the prices of raw material increases, the price of labor increases. So that results in increase in the cost of production and increase in the prices of goods. There's the general increase in input prices that cause cost push inflation. What causes cost push inflation?
Cost push inflation is that when there is an increase in the prices of input like raw materials, oils, labors, and all. So because of that, cost of production is also increased. Because of that, inflation is increased, and that inflation is called cost push inflation.
Next, the inflation is measured in terms, can be calculated in terms of price index. So price index is the weighted average of basket of goods and services. So what is price index?
Price index is weighted average of the basket of goods and services.
There is a base year identified when we want to measure inflation. The base year is identified, which is valued as 100, and the base year is that year where the prices have been stable and the economy has been growing in a very healthy situation. So such a year is considered as a base year. Based on that base year as 100, we calculate the price index as on the current year. The price index of current year and the price index of the previous year, they both help us to determine what is the inflation rate. So it is current year price index minus last year price index whole divided by last year price index into 100. That is as the percentage increase in inflation. So what is inflation?
Inflation is equal to price index for current year minus price index for last year. Last year means previous year. So price index was current year minus previous year upon previous year into by 100.
Great. Next is wholesale price index. The price index, which is based on the wholesale prices of goods and services. In the wholesale market, what are the prices of goods and services? Based on that, when the index is prepared, this is called wholesale price index or WPI. This helps to determine the industrial policy and take the macro decisions in the economy. So what is WPI?
WPI is wholesale price index. When we have to find price index on wholesale level in the economy. The index is called wholesale price index. It is used for deciding industrial policy. It is also called macroeconomics. What to say? It's play a major role in the macroeconomics.
Whatever the policy decisions we have to take in the macroeconomy are determined through the WPI, that is wholesale price index. Then there is a consumer price index. Consumer price index is based on the retail prices of goods and services in the economy, and this helps to determine what should be the minimum wage level and overall welfare position of the individuals in the economy. So it is very important for consumers. So what is CPI?
CPI is called Consumer Price Index. To determine the price index in retail level, is in consumer level, we take the help of CPI. It determines the wages of the labor and welfare of the consumers.
So here we end the chapter, that is money supply and inflation. Now we go to the chapter 4, that is theory of interest. So you are ready for chapter 4?
Yes, sir.
So what is the name of the chapter?
Theory of interest.
Okay. Interest is the reward for lending. So what is interest?
Interest is a reward for lending the money.
Okay. Interest is to compensate risk, hardship, and utility. When a person lends, he has a risk of whether the money would be returned or not. Second thing is he has to go through a hardship because he doesn't have the liquidity. The person who borrows the money, he has the liquidity. Third thing, he cannot utilize the money for the time he has lended. The money should be utilized by the person who has borrowed. So these are the three compensating factors for interest. So what are the compensating factors for interest?
Compensating factor for interest is that first one is risk. Whenever he gives money, he has risk. Second one is the hardship. He has to face trouble when he give his money to someone else and whenever he required. And third one is utility. When he compromise with his money, he has to make arrangement for himself.
Second, okay. How is the rate of interest fixed? So the rate of interest is fixed through classical economists as well as the macroeconomics. I will explain you one by one. First, we go to the classical, that's called the loanable fund theory. According to loanable fund theory, there are certain people who supply the loanable funds, those who have savings. And there are people in the economy who want the liquidity for investing, to buy a house, to buy a car, or to invest for industrial purposes. So those people who demand liquidity, they create a demand curve which is downward sloping. Lower the rate of interest, they are ready to demand more. Higher the rate of interest, they demand less. Second is the suppliers of loanable fund, those who have savings and ready to supply. Because there is hardship in lending, so these people will supply more at higher rate of interest and supply less at lower rate of interest. So what is the classical economist talk about determining the rate of interest is by the intersection of demand curve and supply curve. Demand curve is downward sloping, supply curve is upward sloping.
Upward sloping.
So the rate of interest is determined by demand curve and supply curve at the point of what?
Interaction of demand and supply curve.
Correct. There are two things very important, Shweta, you have to understand. One is, if the loan is secured, people are ready to lend at a lower rate of interest. But if it is unsecured, they would demand higher rate of interest. So what can you say about security and rate of interest?
See, whenever the loan is secure, the rate of interest is less, and whenever there is a unsecured loan, rate of interest is high because in both the things risk is arise. In secure, we have security of the something like house, car, and something. And when they give personal loan, then there is no security. So because of that, rate of interest is arise high.
Second thing is, when you lend for a shorter period, the rate of interest is low. When you lend it for a longer period, the rate of interest is high. So what you can say about the duration of lending and the rate of interest?
In short duration, rate of interest is low. In long duration, rate of interest is high.
So here we have understood the classical aspect of interest. Now we go to the Keynesian. I told you that Keynes had, while I was teaching about macroeconomics, I told you Keynes had written a book, General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. So what is the name of the book that Keynes wrote in 1936?
The Keynes wrote the book's name is General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money.
Money. Okay, so he talks about determination of interest in a different way vis-a-vis the classical economists. So what he said was, people demand, he considers an economy, either the people can keep the money in cash or they can put in the bonds. If the interest rate is high, the bond prices are at a certain level. Whenever the interest rate falls, because there's the fixed rate of interest on the bond, when the prices fall, when the rate of interest falls, the prices of bonds go up. So with the result, he says, if the rate of interest is high, on the one hand, the person is getting more rate of interest, so he's ready to part with his liquidity and go for the bonds. When the rate of interest are low, he is preferring to keep liquidity, not ready to invest in bonds. So he finds that the demand for liquidity is more when the rate of interest is low and high when the rate of interest is the demand for the rate of interest is low, the demand for liquidity is high, and when the rate of interest is high, the demand for liquidity is less. So he has a downward sloping demand curve for the liquidity. So we have to understand what Keynes says is money is demanded for three purposes. First is for transaction, second is for precaution purposes, third is for speculative purposes. We can combine the transaction demand for money and the speculative demand for money, transaction demand for money and precautionary demand for transaction for doing day-to-day transactions and precautionary for any eventualities that may happen. So kept together. Keynes says this transaction demand for money or precautionary demand for money is directly related to income. So Shweta, you have to understand that higher the income, higher the demand for transaction money. When I'm talking of transaction demand, that includes precautionary demand also. Okay, so
Yes.
higher the income, higher the transaction demand for money.
Demand. Yeah.
And second thing we talk about is speculative demand for money. Speculative demand for money means when the rate of interest are high, the demand for interest is low. People invest in the bonds because they are expecting the bonds to increase, their price to increase to get the capital gain. Second, the compensation that they are getting from the interest is also high. When the interest is low, they would like to hold the cash. So the demand curve for speculative demand for money is downward sloping. Correct?
Yes.
So the total demand for money is transaction demand for money plus speculative demand for money. So this is the liquidity preference theory, which has been given by Keynes. So what you have to memorize and keep it in mind is, according to liquidity preference theory, if the interest is low and the income is low, if the interest is low, the demand would be more, and income is low, the demand would be less. When the income increase, demand will increase, and when the rate of interest will increase, the demand will decline. Right? I will repeat it once again. Lower demand would be there if the income is low and the rate of interest is high. Got it? If the income is low, if the income is low and the rate of interest is high, the demand will be
low. Means income and demand in the same level, and interest will be opposite of that. High income, high
Absolutely.
demand, and interest will be low.
Low income, high interest.
Yeah.
Demand would be less.
Yes.
Low income, high interest, demand would be less.
Yes.
High income, low interest, demand would be more. So income and interest are inversely related. Right? Income and interest, demand curve, if you really see
Yeah, so
how it is
same.
behaving. Right.
Income and demand are inversely proportional to rate of interest because high income, high demand.
Demand. If you really see, as the demand declines, the income falls and the rate of interest increases. Whenever the income increases and the rate of interest decline, income is increasing, rate of interest, the demand is increasing. So this is what Keynes has shown based on the liquidity preference theory. So now we have understood the classical theory as well as the Keynesian theory. Now we're going to understand another very important concept that is called ISLM curve. We're going to understand the ISLM curve. I stands for investment, S for savings, L for liquidity, M for money supply. Okay, so this model was given in 1937. This model was given by Richard Hicks. He's a Nobel laureate, and this was further developed by Alvin Hansen. So let us now understand what is ISLM curve. First of all, let us understand the derivation of IS curve. Okay, I stands for investment and S for saving. So according to the classical economists, savings is always equal to investment. Whatever is saved is either invested. So total savings is always equal to total investment. And whenever rate of interest are high, when the rate of interest are high, the savings is high. When the rate of interest falls,
is high, saving is high.
When the interest rate is high, the savings would be high, and the rate of interest falls, the saving would also fall. Right? And when the income is high, the saving would be more. When the income is low, then the saving would be low. So what we find is, as the expenditure, so we get an IS curve, investment and saving curve.
Yes.
So investment and saving curve.
IS, yes, sir. Investment is equal to saving in IS curve. I stand for investment, S stand for saving. So whenever there is a saving, that ultimately equally leads to the investment. As you told, sir, that whenever people save, he will definitely
okay. So let us have a relationship. Income increases. What will happen is saving increase, right?
Yes, sir.
Saving increase means supply will increase.
Yes, sir.
Right? When the saving is more, the supply will increase, and the supply will increase, the rate of interest will fall. Look it very carefully. When the income increase, saving will increase. Right? When saving will increase, interest will fall.
Supply. Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah.
So the relationship between income, when income is increasing, interest rate is falling. Got it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When the income is increasing, saving is increasing.
Yeah.
When the saving is increasing, the supply of availability is more, the interest rate will fall. Right? When the interest rate will fall. So automatically the relationship between income and rate of interest is inverse.
Inversely.
Okay. So IS curve would be downward sloping.
Yeah.
When we are, another thing, let me explain. In the IS curve, on x-axis, which is the horizontal line, we are having income levels, right?
Yes.
On the y-axis, we are having rate of interest,
Okay.
right? As the income is increasing, increasing, rate of interest is falling, right? Whenever the income is decreasing, the rate of interest is increasing. So when we draw the IS curve, this would be a downward sloping, just like a demand curve. Just like a demand curve, it would be downward sloping. So this is the IS curve. So IS curve is upward sloping or downward sloping? Correct. So whenever there is increase in income, the rate of interest will decline, right? If we have to increase the income, the rate of interest would have to decline. If we reduce the rate of interest, so here in the IS curve, the rate of interest is being determined by the income level. Now we go to the derivation of the LM curve. LM curve is given by Keynes, as I've already explained. L stands for liquidity and M stands for money supply. Money supply is determined by the government exogenously, not. Money supply is exogenously fixed by the government. When we are studying this model, we are understanding that the money supply is being determined by the government and the prices are fixed. This is the assumption. Okay. Now what you see how the Keynesian works. When the income increases, whenever the income increases, the transaction demand for money increases.
Yes. Sir.
Yes, no. Whenever the transaction demand for money increases, the LM curve will shift right. Right? The LM curve will shift right.
Right.
Obviously, when the LM curve is shifting right, the rate of interest will increase. When LM curve is shifting right, the rate of interest is increased because LM curve is downward sloping. LM curve is downward sloping. Money supply is fixed.
Yeah.
The demand has increased because of increase in income. The demand for money has increased. So obviously the rate of interest will increase. I am repeating it once again. Be very clear in your mind. When the income increases, the transaction demand for money increases. When the transaction demand for money increases, LM curve shifts right. When LM curve shifts right, the rate of interest increases because the money supply is fixed.
Oh, supply is fixed here.
Supply is fixed, demand is increased. So the rate of interest will increase. So this is how we draw the LM curve. So LM curve is income increases, rate of interest increases. From the LM curve, what we derive is when the income increases, rate of interest increases. Because I just repeated once again, when income increase, LM curve shifts right, rate of interest increase. That means there's a direct relationship between the income and the rate of interest. So this curve, LM curve, is an upward sloping curve. So what Hicks had put forward is the income level and the rate of interest. The income level and the rate of interest would be determined at the point of interaction of the IS curve, which is downward sloping, and LM curve, which is upward sloping. Now, if we have to increase the income level of the economy and keep the rate of interest stable, what is the best methodology is the government has to increase its expenditure. When the government increases its expenditure, the income level would increase. Obviously, when the income level would increase, the IS curve as well as the LM curve will shift towards the right. Both of them, when they will shift towards the right, what will happen is at the same rate of interest, the overall production in the economy will increase and there would be a larger welfare of the economy. That's how they came out of the depression in 1930s, and it was very, very successful model in 1970s. So this is all in chapter 4. So I hope you have understood the concept. So let me revise the whole thing quickly. You ready?
Yes, so I'm ready.
So first we went to the chapter 4, chapter 3, where we are studying the supply of money as well as the inflation. So what is money? What are the
Money
four
is
things?
anything that money is
Continue.
anything that perform four function: medium, measure, standard, store.
Great. And in the money supply is controlled exogenously or endogenously?
Both.
Correct. So exogenously it is determined by whom?
Government.
Endogenously it is determined by what?
Internal system like banking.
What are the four definitions of money?
Four definition of money are M1, M2, M3, M4.
Okay, what is the narrow definition of money?
M1 is called narrow money.
Okay, great. So we have understood the four things which are there in the money. All these things are currency. Yeah, money supply is a stock concept or a flow concept?
It's stock concept. It is known as at a point concept.
Absolutely, it is a single point of time. Okay, what is demand deposit?
Demand deposit is current account, saving account, and
Margin,
whenever
margin
margin held
against
against letter of credit, whenever
and current.
FD matures, OD balance in that, and balances against currencies.
Okay, the matured RD and FD is also a part of the demand deposit. So what are
Demand
time
deposit.
deposits?
Time deposit are FD, RD, and cash certificate.
Cash certificate, absolutely. So inflation, what is inflation?
Sustained rise in the price of goods and services over a period of time.
Correct. Does it result in erosion of value? Does inflation result in erosion of value?
Money value falls.
Okay,
Purchasing power
correct.
falls.
So there's erosion of value and the real value of the money. Fine. So what are the negative impact of inflation?
Negative impact of inflation is that money value decline, purchasing power of money decline, and second, saving also decline due to
The
inflation.
positive impact of inflation?
Positive impact of inflation is that employment increased and debt burden of government is also reduced.
Absolutely. So automatically the demand is more, so which results in all these things. Okay. What is a healthy rate of inflation?
Healthy rate of inflation is 3 to 4%.
Okay. What is demand pull inflation?
Demand pull inflation is an inflation whenever there is a rise in demand, then there is increase in the prices of goods and services.
Okay. What is cost push inflation?
Cost push inflation is an inflation whenever there is the input prices of the product is raw material, like raw material labor that increase, and cost of production is increased due to that inflation arise. That is called cost push inflation.
What is price index? Weighted average of
Price
what?
index goods, basket of goods and services.
Correct. Then what is the base year?
Base year is a year in which the economy is stable and there was a people in a welfare situation, means healthy
Okay.
situation.
So here the price index is capped as 100. On based of that, the price index of other years is concerned. How will you calculate the inflation of current year?
Inflation is calculated current year price index minus previous year price index upon previous year price index into 100.
So it is a percentage of increase in price index vis-a-vis the previous year. Okay.
Previous year.
Okay. Now we go to so what is WPI?
WPI is a wholesale price index which is calculated price index at wholesale level in which industrial policy is also decided, and it is play major in microeconomics.
So
Major
what
role.
is CPI?
CPI is consumer price index. It is the price index on which consumer level prices of the goods and services decided. It is for the retail level or consumer level. It's decided the minimum wages of the labor.
Correct. So this marks the end of chapter 3. Now we go to chapter 4, that is theory of interest. So what is interest? Interest is reward for what?
Interest is a reward paid. Interest is a reward paid by a lender for lending the money.
Absolutely. So what are the 3 compensations, reasons for compensating?
3 compensation reason of money is first one is risk, second one is hardship, third one is utility.
Okay. According to classical theory, the rate of interest is determined by loanable funds.
Okay.
How it is determined?
It is rate of interest as per the demand. Rate of interest is means decided. Means how much money is demanded in the market and how much they will provide.
Loanable demand curve is downward sloping or upward sloping?
Because relation is inverse, so relationship this is downward sloping.
Okay, loanable fund supply curve is downward sloping or upward sloping?
So it's upward sloping because rate of interest or supply is directly proportional.
Absolutely fine. So according to loanable fund theory, where the two intersect, that determines the. So obviously it so higher the income, lower the rate of interest. Higher is the income, lower the rate of higher the income, higher the savings, so lower the rate of interest. The relationship between income and rate of interest is inverse. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, now we go to ISLM. ISLM curve is given by Richard Hicks, who is a Nobel laureate in the year 1937. That is based on the Keynesian theory. So when we are deriving the IS curve is downward sloping or upward sloping, where it is showing the relationship between the income, which is on the x-axis, and rate of interest on the y-axis. It's downward sloping or upward sloping?
Downward sloping.
Because according to the classical economists, the relationship between income and the rate of interest is inverse. And investment is always equal to savings. Correct. Now we go to the derivation of the LM curve. LM curve is based on L stands for liquidity, M stands for the money supply. So according to Keynes, when the income increases, the demand for liquidity increases because of the increase in the transaction demand curve, and the LM curve shift right. When the LM curve shifts right, when the income increases, the LM curve shifts right, the rate of interest declines or increases?
Increases.
Exactly. That means when the income increases, the rate of interest is increasing. So the LM curve is upward sloping because the relationship is direct. So the interaction, according to Hicks, the point where IS curve and LM curve, according to Hicks, when the LM curve which is sloping up, IS curve which is sloping down, where these two intersect, that will give the equilibrium level of income and rate of interest. So in case we want to make the economy more healthy, what is the way out? The government has to increase its expenditure.
Fix interest at that inflation level.
Automatically it fixed. When the government increases its expenditure, the income level goes up.
Yeah.
The IS curve shifts right, as well as the LM curve shifts right. So at the same rate of interest, the income of the economy all increases and the welfare of the people at large increases. So this is all about chapter 3 and 4 of Advanced Bank Management, Module A, Economics. And thanks to the entire team. Thanks to you, Shweta ji. And I now hand it over to Nishan ji to close it.
Thank you, Ashwini sir, for your valuable time. Thank you, Shweta ji, for your valuable time. Thank you all the viewers and all the students who joined on Zoom and on YouTube. And sorry for our technical issues. We will see you soon in next week. Bye-bye. Take care. Good night.